Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the founder of non-profit helping people restart their lives after prison, and of course, award-winning author and former journalist, no other than Mr. John David Graham.
Glad to be here today. Thank you.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. John, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, let me just say that I've had a lot of career detours over the years. I was a truck driver, I was a children's home counselor, I was a school teacher, I was a journalist, and at one point I was even a minister. And I didn't do well in any of those careers until I was 53 years old. And I decided that my wife and I said, let's see if we can help people who are struggling more than us. And we opened our home as a shelter. And one thing led to another, and the Department of Correction asked us if we would take in some men coming from prison to
Mhm.
help them get back on their feet. And that was the beginning of Good Samaritan Home. And in the past 25 years, we've helped 2,500 men and women restart their lives.
Mr. John David Graham, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And let's talk about your award winning fees running as fast as I can. Can you tell us to reflect the book's core message?
One of the things I found working with people come out of prison is they made terrible mistakes. But I realize in my own life, I've made my own mistakes, and I'm not alone. Many people have made life changing mistakes, regrets. And I would try to talk about that to people in the community and give data and statistics, and nobody heard that. So, what I tried to do was, with my writing background in journalism, how can I tell the story of second chances? And I came up with this novel idea of Daniel Robinson and how he came from an abusive background in poverty, and he didn't have the tools to make the right decisions that we think are normal. I like to compare it to a race that life is, we think it's a sprint where you simply go to school, go to college, get a good job, get a perfect wife and perfect children, and then you're an integral part of the community and your life is perfect. But I've found that it's not that way. Many of us make mistakes. I call it a limp that we develop, and we can't run as fast as everybody else. And I've learned in my own life and the life of the people we deal with that life is a marathon. And that's the story of Daniel Robinson, that we fall down many times, but if we keep getting up and keep running, we can reach our goals. And that's why I call it everyone's story, because it's about people like you and me. And that's what readers have
Indeed.
said.
Indeed, it's all about people, people, people. So, Mr. John, is this book autobiographical or fictional or blend of both?
Well, I would say that all literary fiction is biographical to a degree. It all starts in some truth, some experience. And I was born in Pittsburgh, where Daniel was born. I grew up in that type of environment. But everything is not just about me. It's about people like me and like you, and it's it's uh, it's an exemplar book. And so I like to compare it to Somerset Maugham's book of Human Bondage, which was not autobiographical, but it was based on his own experiences. And that's why it's still being read today, 100 years later. And so, in fact, the storyline is very similar. Daniel has a limp, an emotional limp, just like Philip Carey did in that book. And that limp makes us run slower. But ultimately, we can reach the end of the race if we keep running. That's so, yes. And in my life, I didn't publish until I was 75 years old. And,
Hmm.
so that is just proof that it's not writing is not something you do when you're 25 because you haven't done anything yet. It's something you do after you've experienced life. It just takes time to get there.
Indeed, but you made it, Mr.
Yeah.
John. You did it. How does the metaphor of running shape the book's exploration of struggle, escape, or growth?
It's interesting because when I finished the book, I'd written for 10 years on the novel, and I even had a professional editor. We rewrote it again and again and again to come up with what we felt to be the emotional layering, but it was rejected by critics, by literary agents 200 times until I found the a last effort, an outsider press called Don Quixote Press, and they try to write outsider stories from outsider writers like me. And it was one of those things where I kept getting so many rejections that I began to think that it was not a good story. But now, when I see the way awards come in and I see the reviews, particularly from readers, when I see those come in, that is absolute proof that if when you do your best and you never stop running, I like to call it we continually editing our lives like a book. We're always editing, and it's to me it's not just a lesson; it's a model for all of us to never let our past define us. Keep editing.
Keep editing, people. Try until you succeed.
Absolutely.
And congratulations, Mr. John, for succeeding and producing this amazing book. And can you share a personal experience that become a turning point in the story or your writing process?
Daniel, like many of us, grew up in a family that was not connected. His mother was mentally unstable. His father was abusive, and he ran away. He ran away to the only man he could trust, and that was his pastor. And his pastor was the model of what a father should be to him until he abused him. And here was Daniel, 17 years old, and had lost faith in everything. And he spent the next 30 years trying to undo the damage that experience did. And that's what I found with the people we deal with, that is that victims often, because they're so damaged, that they can become victimizers. And so often we have to go back and deal with that childhood abuse. And if we don't deal with it, we're haunted by it all of our lives. In fact, at one point, Daniel he's been married for many years in this story, and he's looking back, and he said to his wife, "You know, it's been 20 years since that man did that to me, but I feel like it's yesterday." And I think there are many of us like that, that we're still haunted by the ghosts in our past, and it takes what I call a healing of the memories.
Indeed, healing of the memories and let it go. What challenges did you face while translating such an intense theme into a book?
Uh, well, obviously, the biggest challenge was just writing is relatively easy compared to publishing because there are so many books out there. And today, with the electronic publishing world, anybody can publish, but that doesn't mean you have a good book. And we used to call it vanity press, where you simply printed your own books. Now we do it electronically, but dealing with rejections, knowing that I had put so much work into this, and getting rejections from people who strangers, basically people in New York who had no idea what the storyline I was writing about, and they were looking for the next hot story, and I was trying to write something that was far more intense and far more personal than say some zombie story that might make a television movie. It was uh, I like to think of it like Titanic. That Titanic is basically a story about lifeboat safety. But when you brought in Jack and Rose and you gave people and you gave emotion to lifeboat safety. Today, we still cry when we watch that movie. And that's what I tried to do with this story is I wanted to talk about uh, uh, healing of our memories, healing of our abuse. I wanted to talk about second chances, and not as a documentary, but as an emotional healing experience. And that's what people have written to me. They've said I couldn't stop crying when I read Daniel's story because it was my life, and that to me is what it's all about.
Mr. Gunn, what is a misconceptions about running from problems that your book aims to redefine?
I think we live in a culture today, particularly with the Facebook age, where uh, you uh, uh, you can be defined by your past, by an incident, by a photo, or now by artificial intelligence, and that can, particularly young girls, that can haunt them. It can ruin them, and it's very, very, very important to know not just who you are, but to have people whom you can trust. And Daniel could not have made it without Kate because she was running from her own demons. And together, I like to think of them like two people who were bent and they learned to lean on one another. And that to me is finding people you can trust because once you've been hurt, trust is very hard. But if you can find people to trust, then we can walk straight again. That's the key message is there is hope. There is a second chance.
Indeed, they always hope people don't lose hope because hope is in the core always. How did you structure the book to intertwine action with introspection of character development?
Interesting, you should say that because I ended up rewriting it again and again with either major or minor rewrites 24 times. And the truth is, the story almost wrote itself. And it took a direction of its own because I started to write more like a journalist. I started to write factually. And when my editor got involved, he said that he couldn't identify with the character, he couldn't feel him. So I had to go back and layer in emotions into the character to make him human. And that's when I found that it took directions. And in fact, we brought in a whole new character line with the Daniel's children and how in the one scene where he has to raise the children alone, how difficult that is. But in my original volume, I had moved over that too quickly. I didn't show the complexities and the emotional devastation of that. And but a key theme that came out of it was that he had taken in a man coming from prison who was a black man, and this was in the racially charged 80s, and there was a lot of conflict with that in the community. But that character became not just a minor character in the story where Daniel helped him; he became a major character that helped Daniel. So I didn't see that coming, but the character's name was Charles. He came to life as I was writing, and he taught me where the story was going, if you know what I mean.
Indeed. So, Mr. John, how does the book address the balance between endurance and burnout, both physical or emotionally?
Uh, uh, I guess from a personal perspective, I wanted to quit more than once. I'm working a full time job running an organization, and I was traveling back and forth to do my writing away from my house where I have some privacy. So I felt like I was being pulled in several directions, and with all these directions or these rejections, it's so easy to quit. And in fact, I got so many rejections, I barely even opened them because I knew what they were. And I guess what I had to conclude was it's not about public acceptance, it's not about accolades or rewards. It's about doing the job you set out to do. The endurance is simply finishing the race the best you can. So my goal then was no matter what the agents said, no matter what those publishers said, I was going to write my best novel so that I could look at it and say, I did my best. And and that's what we did at the end of the project. I felt we had a good story, an emotional story. And then when the awards started coming in, we've had 37 literary awards to date. That to me is just icing on the cake. It's just confirmation. But the real thing is that I was able to do what I'd set out to do 50 years ago. When I was 25 years old, I started to write it and stopped until I was had something to say.
Again, congratulations, Mr. John, for all those accolades. Hoping for more and more accolades to come. And as an author and founder of nonprofit, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, my Good Samaritan Home was the product of my own passion. And like I say, we started off in my own house. We sharing a bedroom with strangers uh, coming into our house, and many of them had felonies come. So um, I realized that it won't live beyond me unless I train people to have the same passion. So my goal is that that Good Samaritan Home will live well beyond me now with our 10 staff members. And we actually have 21 houses now instead of our own single house. So we've grown significantly. And the idea is that the community is safer when somebody can come from prison and get a job and become a productive taxpayer instead of a tax burden. So my real goal is that Good Samaritan Home will live well beyond me. And my other goal is I'm writing a sequel now, and at my age, I really should be sitting on a lawn chair in the backyard and having a pina colada. But and writing is hard. Writing is very hard to to bring that initial draft out. And there are times I say, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I should take a break, and I feel like I owe it to my grandkids to set an example of not giving up on your dream. And so I need to tell now Charles' story, the rest of the story. So that's my real goal.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. John. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to write their own book?
Well, the statistics say that you can finish a good book, but realistically, you'll only sell maybe 100 copies, maybe in its lifetime, maybe 250 copies. So don't look at the sales. Look at the writing, and don't be afraid to edit your book. But most important, start writing. Just sit down and start writing something that has passion for you. And if at the end of the road you have a good story, then that's all that matters. So don't not try. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, try and try and try until you succeed, people. And thank you for your advice, Mr. Gunn. How has your writing this book changed your relationship with running or with your own struggles?
Well, not physically running. I don't do that. I You can see by my wall behind me. I used to do mountain climbing, but I've had to limit that because my my ego writes checks that my body can't cash anymore. so, uh, but what happens is I uh, I now can honestly introduce myself as a writer, and that to me, because when I set out 50 years ago with a typewriter in the back of my camper to write a story that I couldn't even begin, that to me says that some dreams take a lifetime. Don't be afraid to keep trying. My wife took 28 years to finish her college degree. She never quit. So that example carried over to her.
Yes, don't quit, people. If you have the passion, go, go, go. Just do consistency of what you're doing. So, Mr. John, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, book 101 review in fifth season, comedy 101 second season, and food 101 in its fifth season too. Geography 101 in its fourth season, love letters in third season, and my baby podcast, mental health 101. Movie 101 review and music 101 in its fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. So, Mr. John, what's next for you? Will this book inspire follow-up projects, workshops, or community initiatives?
Well, my first thought is, how do I get on your other podcast, particularly the one about food and and mental health? Uh,
Indeed.
One thing I had in the back of my mind, what I had in mind is, how can I combine both of my worlds? And what I have a proposal I'm looking at is, how can I teach writing to inmates, people who have no voice, people in prison, but not just to tell a story, but to tell a personal story that we could in turn publish with my publisher. So I want to see if I can find a way to give a voice to the voiceless, not as a not as a way to say what you did is okay. I want to give them a chance to say, here's what I did wrong, and here's how I am hoping to change my life, even at this stage. So how that will happen, I don't know, but it just I think it might be a way to bring the community and the prison community into an understanding of one another.
Mr. John David Graham, thank you so much for empowering the world through your books, through your non-profit organization. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your award-winning piece as well as your advocacy to the world?
We're not soliciting any funds for Good Samaritan Home, but what I would encourage people to do is I would encourage you to check out the book on my website, johndavidgraham.com, because it's free on Kindle Unlimited if you're a member, but it's only $5, the price of a hamburger. But I
Yes.
guarantee you, if you read the book, I honestly believe it'll impact you as much as it did me writing it. So I'd encourage people to check it out, even download some free chapters.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. John David Graham because if you support him, more and more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. John, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm very glad to be here today, and thank you again, Daniel.
You are most welcome, Mr. John. More to come, people. See you soon.